Let's talk more about the battle for Ramadi and ISIS in Iraq with Republican Senator Thom Tillis from North Carolina. The senator serves on the Armed Services Committee, and he just returned from Iraq last month. Senator, thanks so much for being with us. Based on what you saw in Iraq, is the coalition defeating ISIS at all?
Well, I think you've seen some bright spots in Tikrit. The Ramadi exercise is not a surprise to us because I think that the ISIS, the last thing they want is progress through Kirkuk and up to Mosul. It was expected that they may take some of these actions. I think that it's a real threat because it's close proximity to Baghdad, but I also think that it's not one of these captures that represent a revenue-generating opportunity for ISIS, which would make it even worse than it already is for them to take ground.
Of course, okay, so you're saying it wouldn't be a revenue generator like some of the oil fields ISIS has captured, but how concerned do you think U.S. officials should be if Ramadi does, in fact, fall completely to ISIS?
Anytime ISIS takes ground, it's a bad thing. We need to be prepared through the coalition forces to provide air support. The Iraqi services, the armed services, have to go in there. They have to defend the situation on the ground. We need to do everything we can to hold the spread and then focus the efforts back on eradicating them from Ramadi and then getting back to the work of moving up through Tikrit to Kirkuk and to Mosul, the home of the caliphate.
You've been critical of President Obama for withdrawing U.S. troops from Iraq. Not just you, of course, but many, many Republicans on Capitol Hill have been critical, saying that it created this vacuum for ISIS to thrive. Does that mean, taking this out to the logical conclusion, that you think we should send combat troops back to Iraq to fight ISIS?
I don't necessarily think. I do believe that we are largely in the situation we are today in Iraq because we withdrew the troop presence similar to what we have in Afghanistan today. If there's some way to reintroduce an American presence that does not put our people on the battlefield but in train, advise, and assist roles, it's probably going to be helpful to getting the Iraqi military to the point to where they can actually take the fight to ISIS.
Well, that's easy to say, but how long is it going to take? We've had U.S. troops in Iraq since 2002 to 2003 training Iraqi troops. When's that going to happen?
Well, I think if we had been there when they were really tested, the first challenge of ISIS was successful, and of course they withdrew. They abandoned equipment that we have been systematically being able to destroy to reduce their artillery capacity or their equipment capacity. But the way we got there, Jake, was by leaving too soon. We let the enemy know when we were going to leave and that we would not be there to provide the added level of support and intelligence that you can only do with some presence on the ground. That's why I think in Afghanistan, after I left Baghdad and Erbil, we went to Kabul in forward operating bases, and to a person the Afghanis say we cannot repeat the mistake in Afghanistan that we made in Iraq. And the Iraqi leadership recognized that they made a mistake. We need to figure out how we can do it in a systematic and safe manner for the personnel, the American personnel on the ground, but it's probably going to require some increased presence there to get their national forces back up to fighting capability, consistent fighting capability.
How big a presence, how large a presence do you think the U.S. should have in Iraq?
You know, we're going back to the military leaders and asking them that question. I will say that some of this, that there are some bright spots in the training that we did while we were there. Their version of special forces have done pretty well. They're the only ones who held ground and were successful. But the regulars, the Army regulars, were simply not ready to bring the fight back to ISIS. That's what we've got to go reestablish.